You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 163 of Life in Ruins podcast, where we investigate the careers and research of those living life in ruins. I'm your host, Carlton Shield Chief Gover, and I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Johnin. Connor, where's David?
David is fighting a battle with a fan right now, which he's currently losing. The fan isn't even moving, but it's still winning.
That's why it's winning, because it's not on. It's not working.
Yeah.
So David has taken his bus and is now in Laramie, Wyoming, and living on Connor's curb.
Land. My goddamn land.
Oh, did he park in the back?
No, just kidding. No, it's public land, technically. I just like to think of him as like a peon, paying tribute to me.
It's funny because I bet it's in the same place that I remember it being during Crabe's wedding.
It's not there currently, but it's on its way there.
Fair.
So yeah, he's dealing with that. He'll hop on one of these episodes in the near future. But for now, on this lovely episode of 163, Carlton has been on a kick, you could say. I think you can kind of pick it up, seeing as like some of the stuff we talked about in our previous episodes. There's been it's been pretty heavy paleo-anth, oldest burials. What else did we talk about? We talked about Naledi. I think that was the same episode, but we've talked kind of about that, and we haven't really done that before in the past in our episodes because we are not paleoanthropologists. But Carlton sent an article today that really kind of spiraled us down and really put us in. Carlton sent us an article today that sent us down a rabbit hole on a topic that we are not super familiar with, but we're interested in. So, and because we needed to record an episode today, I think you sent the article today, just to unveil for folks how organized we are. You sent the article today, and then in the last 30 minutes, we made an outline. Is that too much information?
I think that sums up what happened. No, well, I sent the article yesterday because we were supposed to record yesterday.
Oh, you did send it yesterday.
So what are we going to record about? So recently, I've just been going on to archaeology news sites and what interests me. And so we talked about. I haven't done paleoanthropology in a bit, and I really do like paleoanthropology.
Me too.
And so we clearly don't know the goddamn fossils because we go over this every time, but like we did last time before the Dr. Koenig episode, where we were like, let's take a topic, and we did the same type of thing with that bow, the evidence for Neanderthals having the bow. Mm-hmm. We did that whole thing too. We know the human behavior and activity, how you find it in the archaeological record, and it's really interesting, especially when we're talking about human ancestors. When do we see these behaviors first begin, and how do we see them today? So I came across this article in Heritage Daily. In the archaeology section, it is titled "Evidence of Neanderthal Cannibalism Found in Spain." And I remembered in University of Wyoming when we were doing the bioanth theory course that the topic of cannibalism came up with Neanderthals. I was like, well, let's just talk about cannibalism, and really quickly we started going down some really fucking crazy rabbit holes because there's a lot more evidence for cannibalism, not only just in Neanderthals but atomically modern humans and Homo antecessor, that cannibalism, it's present. And so as you've heard me, Connor, and David bitch about how little evidence there is for shit in paleoanthropology, the fact that there's so much evidence of cannibalism is kind of startling, because we don't have that many fossils, and they're here's a dozen sites where people were definitely cut the fuck up, and it's whoa, okay, and what does this mean, and how do we see it today? And then also as we were going through it, a recent article came out today, and this is June 26th from it was co-authored by from a professor at Colorado State University, Connor's alma mater, and it just so happened that there was oh shit, there's more evidence of this, and that article is titled "A Case of Cannibalism: Smithsonian CSU Researchers Uncover How Human Relatives Butchered One Another 1.45 million years ago." So yeah.
So cannibalism is hot right now. Let's just say that cannibalism is hot in the news, and I think, in my understanding of it, is the common idea behind cannibalism is that we don't really see it till later. Like, we're not seeing it with Neanderthals. We're not seeing it with Homo erectus. I think that's like the common thing. You get really good evidence like later in time that people are eating each other. Obviously, with ethnologists and cultural anthropologists going out and studying people, you have evidence of cannibalism. You might have earlier stuff in Mesa Verde, but it's rare to push it back. And I think obviously that has something to do with the limited record we are having, the limited sample size, etc. But it's exciting and interesting to get into this, and we'll see if this is kind of like challenging the common narrative about this. But I think we're going to start off, because we don't always do this, but we are going to do something. We're going to define terms.
We got to define some shit.
We're going to define some terms right now. So get your pencils ready and write this stuff down.
Exactly. So the first one we got is cannibalism. Cannibalism is the cultural practice of eating human flesh. So it is, so basically cannibalism is always practiced in groups, and it's considered ritual. It's a ritual and social institution. So it is a cultural practice. So like in cannibalistic societies, cannibalism is a norm, and it's not odd like it is in today's societies. Then we have excarnation. And excarnation, as described, I had a list of all the damn terms up, and I dropped my... Oh, 1 second. Edit this out, Chris. Excarnation...
I got it ahead of me if you want me to go into it.
No, I got it. I have the article. Okay. Excarnation refers to the practice of removing the flesh and organs of the dead before burial. Now, this is going to be critical as we talk about this evidence and how people are talking about cannibalism, especially in the past. So we have cannibalism, group practice of eating the dead, of eating human flesh. Excarnation, the practice of defleshing and deorganing bodies before they're interred. No eating. There's zero eating in excarnation. And then we have... Oh, fuck.
Anthrophagy.
Anthropophagy. Anthropophagy. Yeah, anthropophagy. I hate that. That middle piece. Anthropophagy. I can't do anthropophagy. And anthropophagy. I'm sounding it like an idiot, because like that's my redneck roots. This is how I have to say it in order to pronounce it. Oh, geez. What did I just do with that? What is anthropophagy?
It's not... So cannibalism is like the ritual and social practice of it. Anthropophagy is when it happens more incidentally, or is just the act of eating human flesh.
Yes, so that's it. It's not a social institution or a ritual. It is like one person eating human flesh within a society. So like Hannibal the cannibal is actually Hannibal the anthropophagist, or like the Donner Party, like evidence of cannibalism today, where it's like a bunch of people stranded out in the woods, they have to resort to eating each other to survive. So didn't we do a whole whaling episode too about this recently-ish?
I think fairly recently. I don't know if we talked about cannibalism, but there were... I'm going to throw Alfred Packeter in there too, because Colorado.
Oh yeah, and that is the name of
it's a musical,
the dining hall in Boulder.
Oh really?
Yeah. So actually, this is kind of funny. So there was when they redid the whole dining hall, they had a contest of what they should name it, and the South Park guys, who are CU Boulder alums, they're the ones that put Alfred Packer's name up. So it's the Alfred Packer Cafeteria. Named after fucking anthropophagist.
Yeah, well, and they also they wrote a whole... I think their first thing they actually wrote together was Alfred Packer the musical. So there's a whole musical that they wrote and was performed about Alfred Packer, which is something I want to watch.
So this is important. So like we normally today when we talk about cannibals, we're actually talking about anthropophagists, because cannibals that is a group social activity. So like some of those groups that are in the Malaysian islands, I think that Rockefeller kid got eaten by cannibals.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I do want to throw two other terms in there. They're not going to be as important to what we're talking about today, but it's good to know. I guess we are a learning podcast or a teaching podcast. I don't. That's debatable sometimes, but
We're
in
a
this case,
podcast.
we're a podcast. In this case, there's two different types of cannibalism in reference to people or in-group cannibalism and out-of-group cannibalism. So, exo-cannibalism is when you take victims or take people from other groups or enemies that are killed in combat or prisoners of war and eat them, kind of with the aim being to take revenge or assimilate such virtues as their strength or courage. So this is found in the Fiji Islands.
Also in Wyoming. Have you ever been by Crowheart Butte out
No.
near Lander? So there's this butte out in the Wind River Reservation. It's close to Lander, and it was a site. So like Shoshones, hashtag Team Shoshones versus Crows. A Shoshone chief, brave, I don't know, a Shoshone warrior killed a crow, took out his heart, climbed up Crow's Butte, and ate it while the battle was raging. That's how it's got the name Crowheart, and like the crows dipped out.
If we had a soundboard clip for That's So Metal, that's where it would be right there.
We don't have it. Goddamn. Oh, here it is. According to legend, following a 5-day battle for rights to the hunting grounds in the Wind River Range, Chief Washakie of the Shoshone and Chief Big Robber of the Crow agreed to a duel, with the winner gaining the rights to the Wind River hunting grounds. Chief Washakie eventually prevailed, but he was so impressed with the courage of his opponent that rather than scalp him, he instead cut out his heart and placed it at the end of his lance. Oh, I thought he ate it. I mean, it's a legend anyways. I like my version. He got up top and ate it.
Yeah. All right. And there's also endocannibalism, which is the ritual consumption of the deceased from one's own social group. And that, in some cases, is to guarantee that the dead person's spirit would remain amongst the living, kind of in order to perpetuate their presence or maintain continuity between life and death. This is also called funerary cannibalism. So there's kind of a big study, and there's a diversity of cannibalism or anthropophagy, or
fuck that word. Fuck that word.
Can we just call it Alfred Packering or Donnering?
Whatever goddamn culture anthropologist came up with this word needs to, you can't put a P in the middle of a word and then put a second P right after it.
And make it a PH too.
Yeah,
it's not
fuck. Goddamn English is stupid.
We'll just call it Donnering.
Yeah, Donnering. I like that.
So that's kind of the definitions, and from there, and this Neanderthal that was found in the Spanish cave has, they found a Neanderthal juvenile skull, fragments of a collarbone, etc., and there were several cut marks, kind of indicating that they were processed by other Neanderthals or possibly eaten by their relatives. And this is something I think we can bring up now or we can talk about later, but the evidence for cannibalism in the past usually is one thing and one thing only, and that's cut marks, right?
Yeah.
That's everyone assumes that there's cut marks, so that equals cannibalism. And that's kind of been the common thought that there isn't, maybe not defleshing, there might not be excarnation or anything like that. It's always jumped to cannibalism as like the first explanation for these things.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I think that's originally like those old school 20th century interpretations, but as we move to the 21st century, like, it's definitely got a little bit more complex. That's why I wanted to talk about that excarnation, is that there's plenty of human burial practices across the globe that come in a variety of ways. So either defleshing intentionally, or even like we talked about sky burials 2 episodes ago, that's excarnation.
Mm-hmm.
But when we see cut marks, this is where it can get pretty fun, because one thing that I really like about zooarchaeology is especially cut mark analysis, and how you can tell how intense people are harvesting flesh in species, so like bison, for example. You can tell by where the cut marks are on the bison bone to figure out what cuts of meat people are procuring. So just like, same if you go to a butcher at your local grocery store, you can see the cut marks, what pieces of meat they're eating. So you can actually tell, like, oh, how intensively are they butchering these animals to get meat? And we see, especially like in the archaic, they're really getting prime cuts of meat because there's so much more bison. They're running them off cliffs. Whereas we get closer to time, especially during the reservation era, where bison are being systematically hunted by the United States government, or not even hunted, killed. Indigenous cultures across the Americas are like intensively trying to take as much meat and offal off of these animals for nutrients. And so when you look at, as Connor was mentioning, we see cut marks in hominids, and that's like, what the fuck? Like, why are they cutting up hominids? As we talked about in 2 episodes ago, like we talked about like the first evidence of burial practices, right? Is like this, what we're saying with like Homo antecessor, or what's happening at Koobi Fora, is this actually like an earlier type of ritual practice regarding the dead of this defleshing, right? And that's where it gets fun. And that's like, cannibalism is such a hot and heavy topic, especially in today's society. That's why it gets all the heat it does, because that has so much weight to it. And like for us in Western societies, cannibalism is a fucking no. We don't do that. Like that is an extraordinarily taboo. It's taboo, you know. I guess like, since it's cannibalism isn't it's not necessarily taboo because it's not a practice, but definitely fucking
Donering.
Yeah, donering. That's fucking taboo. Like, but sometimes it happens. Like with whalers, it was actually, that I mentioned earlier. I went on a whole podcast thing about Moby Dick. That's where this is all coming from, and the story it's based off of. It was actually common for whalers, especially ones that were lost at sea. Like it was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, you had to do what you do to survive. Like the captain that was the based Moby Dick off of, like when they found him, he had killed his nephew. And when they found him, like in the fetal position in a boat, like sucking on the metatarsals, like sucking on his finger bones for marrow. And they were trying to get him off the boat, and he was trying to protect his nephew's bones that he was eating on. And they're like, oh yeah, shit happens. They've been lost at sea for like 6 months. Like it was a,
yeah.
It
What
was,
else?
I guess
What
it
else
wasn't
you do?
taboo. It's like, but if it's cultural practice of whalers, then I guess it's cannibalism. So now we're getting into fun vocab words. I guess cannibalism was fine if you were like, there was nothing else left.
Yeah. And was that the Essex? Is that the?
Yeah, the Essex.
Yeah. In the Heart of the Sea is a great book on that kind of details that, and they have the movie, which is kind of okay. I think that's good, but yeah. I mean, that's something super interesting. Is that in certain cases it's like excused, it's given. Okay,
that's like shit happens.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also like it's an othering for us. So like as Western culture, as people go out and study other things, you think cannibalism only exists in other cultures, like primitive cultures. You kind of like associate them with that, and I think you could also put that into the past. So you like, you kind of put them away and you say that, oh, it's just other people. It's not what we do, but there is kind of like a stigma that and judgment from us about everyone else in the past. So I think that's where this is coming from, and I think on that point we'll take a little break and poo, and we'll dive deep into this early Pleistocene cut marked hominin fossil from Koobi Fora, Kenya.
Goddamn right, Koobi Fora.
Welcome back to episode 163 of A Life in Ruins podcast. We are talking about humans eating flesh, and we had teased that we're going to talk about some cut marks at Koobi Fora. But my question is, why aren't they talking about Koobi after?
God damn it.
That's the worst dad joke. Yeah, send your groans.
It's pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed it. When you said it in the intro, I was like, you have to repeat that because it's fucking gold.
Yeah, it could work. Delivery could work. But also send me all your groans to my Instagram. Play them as loud as possible. I appreciate that.
You know, you should join that clown college that David did during COVID, and that should be your set piece. That'd be good. I should have called it clown college. But like David really did like a stand-up workshop, and he did an online Zoom performance with the Comedy Cellar, like a famous thing.
Yeah, like a big name thing. So that clown college is not quite that. That's comedian school, I think.
I think it's like literally for clowns. I'm really like, but yeah. So as we're like looking this up, I realized like a recent science article dropped today, or not science article. Shit, I have way too many tabs open. Like we've gotten to the weeds when it came to this cannibalism stuff because it's there, it's everywhere, dude.
Yeah.
It's a hot topic, and
So it is in Scientific Reports, which is published
by Nature. So,
yep.
Right. Remember, and you guys know how we feel about
Yeah.
Nature.
You want us to do the standard spiel? We'll do the airlane.
It's like, be careful when you read archaeology and Nature, because like that's how you get cerruti. You know, usually it's like a brilliant publication outside of that, but whoever's running the archaeology division, I mean, granted, they I love Steve Holland, like he's a really good guy, but like they drop some highly controversial things, and at the end of the day, it gets the field talking. So I guess they're doing their job, because like we talk about it and we reflect on the field a lot, and it spurs a lot of people to action to talk about these hot button topics. So
yeah, and you hope that that creates publishing and stuff to counter those things,
and that's what happens. So
yeah,
fuck,
I don't
doing
completely
it right.
hate it. I don't completely hate it, but I do hate it a little bit. Just because I think it gets disseminated so much to a wider audience, and then they don't miss or then like the larger audience misses like the rebuttals and the later publications that are like, nah, fam, this isn't what's going on. So that's my only beef.
Yeah.
You heard it before. We're a broken fucking record, but there you go.
Fucking record. So this is early Pleistocene cut mark hominid fossil from Koobi Fora, Kenya, by Brianna Pobiner et al. This is Scientific Reports. So we came across it because the news media is buzzing with it, and of course, like they did with our goddamn horse paper, twisting it. And like Mike Ponte, who's a co-author, one of Connor's former professors at CSU, like says like it's not necessarily cannibalism. He says that like repeatedly. They're like they're eating each other, and he's like, no, they're not.
Well, so, I think it's evidence like in the title. They don't say like they don't come out swinging saying cannibalism is practiced. It's just like there's a cut mark here. What does that mean? We don't know.
Then they're definitely cut marks. So what they have is one shin bone by a species that they're not quite sure what it is. Originally, it was uncovered by Mary Leakey of the famous Leakey family back in the day. So the bone, the shin bone, is 1.4 million years old. It's a left shin bone. It was originally described as Boisei, and then later it was changed to something else, and nowadays it's unidentifiable. We know it's genus Homo. We know that for sure. It's a bipedal hominid. We don't know which one, and thank God they did that, because fuck paleoanthropology trying to identify things. But what they have here are they ultra scan the shit out of this shin bone, and they use 3D models of the marks to identify them. And sure as shit, there are multiple vertical and horizontal cut marks on this shin bone.
Parallel, which is really interesting too.
Yeah, so these definitely aren't marks from carnivores gnawing or rodents or any sort of bioturbation, or which means like basically after the thing's deposited, roots or whatever, fuck with it. They're very much cultural marks made by another hominin, and they're towards the I don't know skeletal lingual, but they're towards the knee part of the shin bone.
I think that's because distal is away from the center of the body. What's the opposite
proximal?
Of that? Proximal. I think it's the proximal end of the. We're probably wrong. Tell us we're wrong.
Tell us we're wrong.
Quote us. Yeah. But yeah, so it's near the knee bone. Like you would be cutting off the calf almost, right?
It looks like it because it's towards the back end, so the calf end. Fuck, we really got to go through anatomy again, because we're like, so it's in the back, so it's where your calf would be, right? That's like when you're doing leg curls, it's that part of the shin bone that's cut on. So it's like in a very like, it's not in the middle of the bone. It's in the back towards the meaty bits. So like they're carving through some bipedal calves to get there. And that's where it gets, and they're all in like, they're pretty centered in one part of the bone too. And I guess like the verticality and horizontal, like they're clearly in the same spot. So it's very much fucking intentional.
And I do, and that's kind of I think where they leave it, which is kind of really interesting. That they just say, and they have like a sentence at the end that's like, oh, this could be this could be that, but they're really not calling it either or right now, which I have a ton of respect for doing. It's just saying like this is the evidence. They're cut marks. We need more to study to find if this is actually like a ritual practice.
Yeah, and they're very clearly like, listen, there's uncontested evidence for cannibalism with Neanderthals like much later. This is fucking weird, We're not saying it's necessarily cannibalism or anthropophagy. It could be, because at this point there's still like several species of genus Homo running around. Maybe it's another genus of, I mean, it has to be, right? Like, we're the only ones carrying fucking tools. So it could be a different Homo group. I fucking hate saying that.
It's just,
that's a weird soundbite. It could be another group of genus Homo of coming in and eating them. Is that cannibalism? I don't.
Yeah, is that
Fuck. Now we're getting back into goddamn paleo. Like, maybe
is that
not.
exocannibalism then? I guess that's the but I guess that the assumption with that is that they're all humans and they're all of the same species. Or were they just hungry, or was that just Sunday dinner? I don't know. What are we going to call it?
Right. Like, are they like the Donners? Is this something going on where like they can't eat anything else and they're eating their buddy who's already dead?
I don't know.
I don't know. But it could also be a ritual practice of defleshing their buddy for burial. Like, we can't leave them here to rot. It's one shin bone. I don't know. Where's the rest of the skeleton? Is there more of the skeleton? That, I imagine if there's more of the skeleton, they'd be like, nah, there's no more cut marks.
Yeah. And it might be just that.
Right. This fossil specimen is nearly complete proximal tibia with the proximal end, proximal shaft, and mid shaft present. So we said the right words.
Yeah. Sometimes. But yeah, and we'll see. They did some other kind of scientific stuff, but when we really are seeing better evidence, like this is very much a one-off kind of thing. I think we're not really seeing 1.4 million years ago, maybe even 500,000 years ago. We're not really finding good evidence of human bones being defleshed, I guess. Maybe I think there's one in 600,000 years, Homo sapiens bones from Ethiopia. I don't know. I'll have to double check that, but we're gonna gloss over that for now. We're gonna jump to Neanderthals.
Yeah, so going to like who we know is actually fucking eating each other, and it's Homo sapiens Neanderthalensis, and then also anatomically modern humans are doing it too. Like something weird happened 30,000 years ago. So like everyone's kind of doing it, but it's like mostly in Europe, and Asia, and like Central Asia, at a time when Neanderthals are kind of on their way out, and like initial anatomically modern humans are coming in. So like maybe there's this like, well, there's not many Neanderthals around and they're not having a good time. Maybe it is they're eating each other to fucking survive. And maybe these anatomically modern humans who aren't familiar with the landscape as like initial colonizing populations are fucking eating each other to survive.
Yeah. I'd also be interested to see if it is like, we can call it a modern bias. So people in Europe, or people who are studying sites in Europe, Africa, are taking these kind of approaches where you're doing microscopic kind of analysis of cut marks, etc. And maybe that's not done in other places because of whatnot. But I would be interested to see how many like actual studies are being done in other places to see if that is like, maybe it is like a Homo sapiens thing, or maybe it's just specific to this, where two human groups are nearby. I don't know. That's a good question, but we definitely have evidence, like super good evidence of Neanderthals cutting their homies up and eating them.
Yeah, pretty. Yeah, so like well documented. So it's not just cut marks, but also seeing like human tooth marks or chewing marks. So not only are they being cut, they're being gnawed on like you would at fucking Famous Dave's, and you got a full slack of baby back ribs. And that's the kind of like human bone marks we got on these bad boys. So it's like very clearly like people are eating these people. Type of stuff. So it's definitely happening in Spain, in France, and in Germany, in these Neanderthal populations.
They're also finding it in their gut fauna too, right? I think that's part of that too. Is that at least in Spain, and then later stuff too, they're definitely finding it in their gut fauna. So like, yeah, they're eating people. I mean, there's no other way that gets inside of you.
There's no other fucking way. There's a really, as we were searching through this, we came across this article that I really liked, and it's titled "Were Neanderthals Responsible for Their Own Extinction" by Agustí and Rubio-Campillo. I just assumed that was Spanish, but it might be like I might be fucking up an Italian's name like we did with Umberto. Or Umberto.
Abarella.
Yeah, guys, it's Albarella, not Alborea. It's like, dude, you're giving us the
Albarella.
double L's and you have that accent for saying Alborea. Fucking
We're
Americans. We
sorry.
know one other language, and it's Spanish, and they're taking that away from us.
We're so sorry, though.
We're so sorry. Such a great guest.
Yeah.
And so what they're talking about in this article is, so we know cannibalism is documented in a number of Neanderthal sites. So if it's a number of cannibal sites or Neanderthal sites, it's probably cannibalism because it seems to be like a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So there's Caprina, level 25 from Combe Grenal, Mola Guerci. This is me fucking up French names again. Pradelis.
We need our French speaker here, David.
And here's one for them. Cueva del Boqueta de Zafaria, LC Drone. So yeah, a couple of these places. And they also talk about it being a Homo intercessor and Homo rhodensiensis, and we're not touching that at the moment.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about is as they're radiocarbonating these sites, they're noticing like they're late Neanderthal occupations. They have it's not great, and so they're looking at cannibalism for basically like they kind of ate themselves to death. Is like essentially like what they're trying to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really sad idea that it wasn't humans that killed them off. It was like cannibals that are these Neanderthals got so hungry they just ate each other because they weren't doing so well towards the end of the last glacial maximum was still like 15,000, 20,000 years away, but they're not having a good time.
Yeah, they're definitely on the decline. And it is interesting that if one of their results is that cannibalism is actually an okay strategy, but it depends on what you are in terms of like your territory versus other people's territory. So they're saying like in hostile territory, cannibalism ain't too bad of a strategy, which is so it allows a group to increase its resources and protects the zone from incoming groups. And then once other people are non-cannibalistic competitors introduced, cannibalism becomes an extremely negative trait.
Right.
And it kind of affects them that way, which is a kind of a fucked up paper, but that's an interesting, kind of idea.
So they're modeling this. They're putting this in a computer program, and it's fantastic because you look at the figures, and they clearly screen grab the entire screen, and it looks like something out of fucking. It looks like Fallout 1 is what their screen looks like. But it's so they put in all these variables, and they're showing like without an extra group, Homo sapiens, cannibalism is beneficial because you're keeping the population alive. Like there's that really fucked up quote from The Walking Dead when they meet the cannibals in that core memory unlocked. And they justify it. They're like, if a mother bear is starving and so are two cubs, if the mother bear dies, everyone dies. But if the bears eat their cubs, and so do pandas. A lot of animals eat their young.
Yeah.
When they're not, times aren't great because at the end of the day, they can still, if they eat their babies and survive, they can just make new babies. That's kind of the game theory logic, and that's what they're applying here. Is like, if Neanderthals are eating each other when times are tough, it's going to help. But when you throw in another population that ain't eating each other, but apparently they are.
I don't know. That's interesting. I think that's that'll be in the links in the show notes. So we'll get that. But yeah, so there's
on paper. It's only 6 pages. It's like it's a fun read. It's like, oh, this is how you apply math and computers to like, what's this question solve?
For sure. And I think, and then the kind of the next article, which really is cool because it's talks about like a very large time death from like Homo antecessor to like the Bronze Age, and takes this kind of like big approach to say, what is the evidence for cannibalism in prehistoric Western Europe? I mean, you'd love to see this done in Eastern Europe. You'd love to see this done in Africa, but this is where they're focusing their stuff on. And they really have a good kind of conglomeration, whatever it is, of dates, of methods of cannibalism, of kind of what the population is, who is getting eaten, etc. So I think that is really interesting, and you can kind of see that cannibalism is for sure starting at least 800,000 BP, and then just kind of keeps ramping and gets more evidence as you go through time, which is interesting. I don't know. You want to take a break here and dive back in?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good natural point. So yeah, we'll get back and we're going to talk about that paper, Archaeological Evidence for Cannibalism in Prehistoric Western Europe, from Homo antecessor to the Bronze Age, by Saladi and Rodriguez Hidalgo. So we'll be right back after these smooth messages. Jesus. And welcome back to episode 163. So getting to this article, they document evidence of like legit cannibalism in Western Europe. So Spain, Portugal, France, basically the big players in World War II, minus the Soviets.
You got Croatia in there. They were minor. They weren't a big one in there, but
weren't they Yugoslavia at that time?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So they talk about, I mean, it does a really good case by case of like how long has this shit been going on, and like granted, we're talking about over the course of like thousands of years, and they're looking at like 16 sites. But then again, paleoanthropology doesn't have that many samples to begin with, anyways. So early Pleistocene, we got at Grandolina. They're cutting up kids and eating them. Like going back to that bear analogy. They were between 10 and 15. They were eating children. And these are Homo antecessors. So there's 11 individuals, and it's not great.
Also, a suggested intergroup violence. So that would be an example of exocannibalism. So that's they're eating their neighbors' kids.
Yeah, like so over 44.5% exhibited some type of anthropogenic modification, like being cut or bone breakage. And like this is the big one. They're like cutting, they're breaking open long bones and like sucking out marrow. Like they're eating each other. Like they're going hard. Numerous human teeth marks. They're eating each other. And it just
they were scalped too, which is fucking wild.
People wanted them dead and then in their stomachs very quickly. So who the hell knows?
Jesus Christ.
I did
not expect that to go that hard.
Yeah, whatever Homo antecessor is, which I don't know what the fuck that is, even word that even falls on the tree.
We're not going to try to define it either. Look it up because we can't. We just can't.
Yeah. So Homo antecessor in a couple sites across like France and Spain, they're eating each other. And then we're moving to like Neanderthals really quickly. So there's evidence of cannibalism dating from approximately 130 to 40,000 KY. So yeah, forget everything I said in the first two segments. Like, it's happening rather late. It's like apparently they were always fucking doing this. I was absolutely wrong. And the clearest example of cannibalism is found at Moula-Guercy, France, Cueva del Cedrone, and
Krapina comes in there too.
In Croatia, and that one has controversy. And it's documented a number of other places, but at these sites, human remains are scarce, and some bones show cut marks and green fractures. Those are basically a green fracture is you're breaking them when they're fresh. So like they're trying to extract bone marrow. That's what that evidence is. But it gets weird. It's like one of those things where is this linked to a funerary practice? That's where like this whole thing kind of keeps coming back to play. It's like without us watching them eat each other, or with the evidence of like the DNA and like the fecal matter that shows like no, there's human proteins other than the digestive tract. Like there's human flesh in that shit, literally.
Yeah.
It's like what are we seeing here? Because like we can't affirmatively say like this isn't a burial practice of some sort.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting at the Moula-Guercy stuff. They're treating the hominin and deer carcasses the same way.
Yeah.
That's fucking wild to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess if you're understanding of like human and like you're not thinking about it as cannibalism, you're just thinking about it as another food to eat in this area, that you're butchering them the same, which is really interesting because that means it doesn't really signal any distinction between other folks and animals.
And animals, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, they're doing the exact same thing that they're doing to their prey species. Like,
yikes!
Fuck, that's probably cannibals.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're butchering that long pig. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. What was it called when they put it in the stew? Wasn't there like a Oh my god, I'll have to figure it out. But
I
yeah,
think
I
it's
mean
just
they're
called long pig. I mean,
long. Oh, because in general, okay.
in general, I think in Pirates of the Caribbean, like when they're talking about it, that's, I think we talked about this on the show before. They call it long pork, and if you're listening, it's like, where did you? This is a second movie, and they're talking to some guy, and it's like, oh, I saw that ship at this island. They have the best long pork he's ever eaten, and like the guy's like,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he's like saying there's fucking cannibals there, but like if you don't know that term, it's just like, oh, he's eating a kind of like pork jerky. Cool, like no. I've read this really fucked up creepypasta about going to hell, and Guy Fieri's there and he's having to eat long pork, and you turn down and he's like taking cuts off your legs and feeding it to you. Anyways, that's how I learned.
It'll be in the show notes.
How do you like that long pig? And then we start. So, yeah, that's fascinating. They're treating their relatives or friends or whoever like they are deer. Like it's the exact process, and that's what you'd be doing if you were eating your relatives. You know what you're doing. There's a certain, you can only, I mean, there's a couple ways to skin a cat, but like there's only those couple ways to skin a cat. Same for people. Like there's only so much you can do. Like if you're trying to be,
There's so many ways to skin a human is the name of this.
Yeah, only so many ways to skin a human. That's a great episode.
That's a great episode. So, but moving on, we do see it also in anatomically modern humans in the Upper Paleolithic, also into the Bronze Age. So they did find that, or they estimated that 40% of French Magdalenian remains showed signs of butchery, and only 5% were found in intentional burials. So that's like scavenging, right?
Yeah,
You're not putting them in there, or you're not defleshing them, putting them in there and burying them. You're scavenging, or I guess not burying them. I mean, I guess that's like that gets into the weeds again. Same sort of thing.
There's a group of people in India that do this. I saw them on the Wild Boys. So now that I'm saying that out loud, I don't know if it's necessarily factual, but it's a group of people. They rather, how like Hindus are always trying to do like get into heaven by doing all the good shit they can. Their idea is like, well, if they do all the bad shit, they think if they do all the bad shit in the world, so they like rob graves and eat human flesh. They practice this. One of them tried to eat Wee Man like on television. It was fucking hilarious.
So they're just like they're trying to get all the sins out of them quick, and then they'll just live pure lives later in heaven or whatever that is. So. Yeah.
Yes, the Angori, a small group of ascetic Shaiva sadhus. They engage in post-mortem rituals. They often dwell in carnal grounds, smear cremation ashes on their bodies, and use buds from human corpses for crafts and kapalas and jewelry. So yeah, they're legit. They do this.
Yeah, and this is we're gonna actually change the name of this podcast to How to Pronounce Everything, because we are just so good.
So good about this. But I practiced it, and then also I don't mean to go on a rant, but and talks about modern day cannibalism as we researched this a couple years ago when I was in my introduction to archaeology class. We talked about how there was this like human meat made out of, it's like fake human meat, and it was made out of plant-based proteins, and I don't know how they got the texture and taste right. I've never eaten human, so I don't know, and I've always been bummed, like that'd be kind of cool to try. But recently, last year, as part of a Halloween promo in 2022, a group out of Sweden came up with this. This is from their commercial.
At Oumph, with herb plants and any mouth-watering meat you can imagine. This Halloween, we bring you the scariest plant-based food ever. Plant-based human meat. So be scared, but relax, because it's plant-based. The human meat plant-based burger. Do you dare to taste it? Only available this Halloween, because otherwise it would be creepy.
I want it. I want it so
scared.
bad.
I am scared.
And what's funny enough is like an hour ago before the podcast, Lana was the one that had the Bob's Burgers recipe book, and I've been craving like one of those Bob's Burgers, so I ordered the book, and like that first recipe is based on the first episode where it's like the human meat one. So I'm gonna find these goddamn human meat plant patties, and I'm gonna make that goddamn burger.
You should film it. Do a Carlton Cooks.
Like cooking. Oh Jesus, cooking with Carlton.
Cooking with Carlton.
Cooking with Carlton. Oh, I forgot about this. I can't remember the last time I did a cooking with Carlton.
See, I feel like this is like a gateway drug, though. You start eating like plant-based human flesh. You're like, oh, this is good. This tastes like, and then you kind of crave it, and then you're like, okay, what's the real thing taste like, though? You want to take that next step.
Yeah, just join the Ukrainian Liberation Force and just start like every time I kill a Russian, be like, oh, how's that?
It looks pretty fresh there.
Let's get that backstrap off him. See how that tastes like. No one will tell. We'll just throw him in a mass grave later. And I'll report back.
Jesus Christ.
I'll be like real careful with all my archaeological knowledge to like make sure it like looks like it's a defleshing practice.
You would just
or
put
even
them
better,
in
just cut off the surface, not even get the bone. Like no one will know I'm cutting.
See, that's what you have to do. There should be no marks on the bone. If you hit the bone, you've gone too far.
Yeah, just roast the whole person. We could just oven bake them, like the Hawaiians and the pig. Like I could just oven bake them, and the meat will fall off. There's no bone, and then just mass grave,
sky burial too.
So, oh, dude, even. I mean, what am I, the bird? Am I gonna like peck at it? I mean, gotta process it. I don't want to eat after the.
Wait, you're not going to eat raw human flesh? What are you? Come on,
that's a little that's too extreme. Let me just start with the plant-based burger, and then we'll go from there.
Telling you, it's a fucking gateway drug. Why do you humans do this? Like, we are the only species that artificially created our own meat to feed to ourselves because we didn't want to actually eat ourselves. It is fucking ridiculous.
But apparently, according to this article, Connor, it's genetic. We're predisposed to want to eat ourselves. So it's only naturally come up with a plant-based alternative. So we don't actually commit the sin of not cannibalism, remember, because we did the definitions in the beginning. Cannibalism is culturally approved. We don't want to do anthropophagy, which is not approved. So yeah, I'll do the plant-based human burger.
This only confirms to me that vegans are the worst people on the whole planet.
Or vegetarians, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they all suck.
Weren't you vegan for a bit?
It sucked.
I bet. I felt so bad for you.
It was abuse. That was actually good. Okay, not all vegans are bad, but it is hilarious to me that vegans did create the first human meat.
Yeah, I like it in moderation. Like I'd like going veggie days.
Oh yeah,
like, I do like my meat every now and then. I need that protein. Like and the omega-3s. Like I just don't want to go crazy just by eating plants.
The only thing they could never really replicate, like they could do kind of meat substitutes, which are okay. They obviously don't have like the omega-3s or the amount of protein that you get out of red meat, but they could never replicate cheese in a way.
God,
like they could never ever make vegan cheese good enough as the regular stuff. Like it's just not possible. It hasn't happened.
I really like those meatless crumbles, my Morningstar, those and the black bean patties.
Yeah.
Go-tos. Love those. The
Absolutely.
Chicken ones are weird. It's just like, yeah, I'd rather get the soy crumbles. Like I can fake that pretty well. Like that's good.
And I can fuck with a Beyond Meat burger every once in a while. I mean, they're not terrible, but I mean, I'd have to talk to my future brother-in-law. I don't know. He works for one of those companies that does it with mushrooms specifically. So the tofu-based stuff and the soy-based stuff is just terrible for you. But his company is doing it out of mushrooms, which is something that is less bad for you in general. I just think like high soy and high tofu like diets are just dog shit and not really good for you.
Fair enough. I thought your sister's still not married because they got engaged like a year or two ago, right?
Yeah, she get married in October. So
sweet, congrats to her.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild one.
We got really off on a tangent.
I kind of love these like third segments of these episodes. Just like the rabbit hole that we go down is like something ridiculous.
I like it for the third segment, but like because when you guys try to have me listen to History Hyenas, this was like 2 minutes in. They were always off topic. They're like Genghis Khan was wild. They're like, it was wild that fucking sandwich I had down the corner and it was like fucking gone. I was like, what the fuck is this show? I was like, Genghis Khan was wild. I was like, all right. Anyways, but we leave it for the third segment where we go off on random tangents about soy products.
Yeah, I think we can end our discussion there. Do look up these articles that we're going to drop in the show notes. If you have questions about cannibalism, ask Carlton because he might be one soon. He'll get you the.
I'll be an anthropophagus.
Yeah, pophagus. So, thank you so much for listening to us. Once again, like, rate, review, whatever they say on those big podcasts that actually make money. Please do those things.
Yeah, please do those things. Rate, review the podcast. Yeah. If you're listening to us on the All Shows feed, we greatly appreciate it. But, same as always, click the subscribe button to our individual show. That's how we get the numbers. That's how we get sponsors and people that want to promote on our show. Our numbers are doing well, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for all the love and support you've given us. We'd really love the emails. We'll get back to them when we can.
Yeah. And they've been great and supportive and asking good questions. So, yeah, thank you all for doing that. We enjoy the shit out of it.
So, but are Catholics cannibals? Not just Catholics, Christians. Because, as I'm almost finished with this bottle of wine is the blood of Christ. So is that
and the bread is the body.
And the bread is the body. So is that a form of ritual? Is that still a form of ritual cannibalism? That's the whole point, right?
Okay. The bigger question is, does drinking blood count as cannibalism, or is it flesh derived?
Hold on. Is drinking blood cannibalism? I think it is.
Because I see flesh everywhere in the description. Is Dracula or what's his face? Vlad the Impaler?
Yes. Well, hold on. People are upset about this. Drinking your own blood is considered cannibalism. But then if you drink someone's urine, is that cannibal? No, that's a waste product.
Well, blood could be a waste product too.
Oh, look at this. It's communion cannibalism.
Save that.
If we took these references literally, it looks like cannibalism. Actually, Christians in the other days of the church were accused of cannibalism because they heard about Christians eating Christ's body and drinking his blood. But it wasn't legal at that time, not until Constantine. But they says that the doctor in theology says it's not cannibalism; it's being properly connected to Christ. I don't know. You're eating the dude. Jury's still out on that. Jury's still out. Yeah, all the good stuff. Rate and review the podcast. Really appreciate the ratings and what you guys think of the show. Let us know if there's other topics. We got one lined up. Someone was curious. Send us topics and not necessarily people. We're kind of getting away from the interview thing, to be honest. It's gotten kind of things have changed. We're not all grad students anymore. We've tried. There's some people I want to interview, and you're a professor now. So the dynamic's changing. Everybody.
Yeah.
So give us topics so we can bring people on rather than these strict interviews.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're canceling those interviews, but we're just going to do them less often. More probably people we are closer to. It works better that way.
Yeah, and this is what you guys asked. You guys told us to stop doing those so much, anyways. We're still going to do them.
Yeah.
But fuck it, dude. I'm out. And we'll be sweet, and we're out. Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins Podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
Connor, what is your joke for me today?
Oh, man, this one's good. My buddy crashed the car while listening to Adele. He was rolling in the Jeep.
God damn it. God damn it. That was good. All right, with that, we're truly out.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.